Microphones are a dangerous thing. We're going to move on to our panel discussion. The Storming Caesar Palace is going to be broadcast on Julie? March 20th at 10 p.m. And it's there's another half hour to the movie, then you tell your friends to tune in on that evening. I'm going to bring out Miriam Calmogo to lead the panel discussion. I also forgot to mention that KIXE PBS is member supported. And one of the reasons we're able to do these sort of projects is because of our membership, which actually is very vibrant and growing monthly. So I encourage you, a shameless pitch there, I encourage you to help support your local public television station. And I'm going to leave this.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. We have 4 wonderful community leaders here today. So I will have Mikiala from Native Roots. If you don't know about Native Root, I usually like to tell people that beautiful mural on Placer, that's Native Roots doing. Yes, just like this. Then we have Annalise Pierce from Shasta Scout. If you don't know about Shasta Scout, please look it up and please sign up to get their newsletter. It's really, they would bring underground stories by the community. It's really nice. And we also have Jackie Morganfield. If you've been to the Shasta County MLK event, Jackie is one of the people putting that together, and she's also part of SEIU and United for Good. And we have Anne from Viva downtown? No, Shasta Living Street.
If you have any questions, write them down on a piece of paper and I'll bring up and give them to
So we have, yes, I'll take some questions.
They're so bright.
We have times where we prepare some questions and, I'll start by asking those questions, but this is such a pleasure, such an honor to have this group of really change makers that I don't want to slow it down or just limit it by asking questions. So I'm going to let them go introduce themselves, tell what they're doing, and then we go from there and how they feel about this movie, what it makes them feel.
Can everybody hear me all right? I don't know. A little bit? Okay, how about now? Okay. Aloha kako, I am Mikiala Mahoaui Kalipani ka Nohagai Imayao. My name is Mikiala. I am here in California, but I am originally from Hawaii. And I wanted to first, there were a number of folks who worked on that mural, and Native Roots Network just took it home toward the end there, and did some final organizing and reinvigorated it after we had the car fire and campfire and the pandemic. So I just want to make sure to give props to a number of different organizations who were part of the original organizing, Redding Cultural District, Shasta County Arts Council, and some others who I'm probably going to forget, so I apologize if you're in the audience. Just responding to this film, this is like a story that has some relatability to a lot of other issues that we experience in Hawaii certainly, and here as well. And I think, seeing this film and seeing how when people band together and decide that enough is enough, or that's not just, and what can we do about it, we're really quite powerful. And to see these examples, like the one we saw in this film, of how people have done that, and really caring for their families and their children, was very inspiring. So, I'll leave it at that. Take it over to you.
I'm Annalise Pierce. I'm the founder and editor of Shasta Scout, and we're an online nonprofit independent news service for Shasta County. Just started in 2021. And I found this tremendously meaningful, mostly because of our work right now with our local unhoused community members, and many of the things that they're telling me are very similar to what we heard in the film. Just feeling that they're being criminalized for their inability to survive, to have enough income to find housing, or because they're unable to stay in housing because of their disabilities. So it's really deeply relatable, and it's the work we want to do at Shasta Scout, elevating and amplifying the voices of people who really need to be at the center of these stories and decision making.
I'm Jackie Morganfield. I'm with SEIU 2015. We are the largest labor union in the world now. I'm an e-board member, and when I saw the movie, I realized we haven't came a whole lot farther than where they were then. We're still having the same kinds of fights. We're fighting for justice. We're fighting for financial equity, and it's mainly affecting people that are brown and black. So I felt right at home. That's what I do. I fight to unionize people so that they can have a voice with their jobs. The movie was just, it was just a reflection of, it's like we're going around in circles. We haven't came a whole lot farther since the late 60s and the early 70s. We're still doing the same kind of fighting. The same kind of people are still doing the same kind of fighting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Thomas. I'm the founder and director of Shasta Living Streets. I work on economic justice, and it's all about transportation is what we work on. So one of the things that really struck me when she said, if you want your life to get better, you have to fight for it. And she said, one person thinks it only happens to them, and then you find out it's all about so many others. So we often don't realize how much families and individuals have to spend on transportation in our community today. It wasn't always like this, but in our community today, pretty much every person of driving age has to own a car. There's almost no other way to get around. We don't talk about this a lot. We don't lead with it necessarily at Shasta Living Streets. We lead with making life better. We lead with joy. We lead with a lot of other things sometimes than what it really comes down to is economic justice and the cost of transportation, then what that means for people. So there was a poster they had somewhere in there, and I realized that sort of our poster could be people before cars, and you'd be surprised how hard that is and how hard we've been fighting for 13 years to make that the case.
Thank you. And I would add that I was a welfare recipient, so the process going to Shasta County trying to get services, that was really hard. I know I walked there almost 5 times and I went back. I couldn't go in. It's how hard it is for people who need the help to go. I finally went in and all the paperwork, I took it home, cried, went back, took it home, cried, And at the end, they gave me $27 per month, and I had 2 kids. I went back and I said, please take it back and take my name out of everything. So just to say that it's not the story of someone else, it's part of my story. The frustration, the pain of going, and the label, the belittling that's happening, you just see it and you like, just take it. I really don't even want it. So it is really hard, and it's like what you said. We
It's a
haven't.
circle.
That's not long ago. So it hasn't changed much, and the fight it's kind of like still there. So we know also that they made some progress. They were able to see through the system and see what they can do to change. And I know that a lot of you guys are making that also happen in your own field. So what would you say is the best way to kind of like come together and make a deep change, a systemic change like this one?
I think when we can study city civics and learn about our own local governments, that gives us the power that we need to elect officials that will champion the things that matter to us most. Because if we don't deal directly with the politics that are running everything in our towns and our state, we are left out of the decisions that are going to be made, that they directly pertain to us.
Yeah, and connected to that, I think we have to put the voices of people with the lived experiences at the center of decision-making, which Anne was kind of talking about, usually leading with a different message other than equity, because people in power often don't necessarily have that lived experience of a lack of equity. So they care more about quality of life or, having fun or entertainment. But for people who actually need bike paths or walking paths to get to work, to get their kids to school, that's where the conversation needs to be centered, and the people in power need to hear those voices.
Yeah, where it's headed now for transportation is, they call it Safe Streets for All or Vision Zero. So the federal government has now picked this up, as well as the state of California, and we're going to start an initiative here in Redding Shasta as well, community-led initiative. But what you don't sort of realize until you get so deep into it, there was a recent meeting a month ago where regional transportation meeting where they were discussing this new effort to do planning for downtown Redding, and described we have some of the highest rates of killing people on the streets, walking or biking, of all races. And it's some of the highest rates of death and injury in the country, actually. And described this in an agency meeting, and one of the elected officials said, yeah, but who are those people? Those people don't matter. Who are those people getting killed? And so that's horrible. It's really, really horrible. I talked to someone, a lot of people who get killed here are killed on 273 between Redding and Anderson. I talked to someone one time who described to me, it's often sort of perplexing why people get hit by cars at night. And I talked to someone who described he had to leave work at 2 in the morning. There's no other way for him to get back to Anderson. And it's dark, there's no lights. So the only way to get back to Anderson is to walk the white line. And suddenly, it still gives me chills. I'm like, so in order for him to get home safely, so he doesn't step in glass, so he doesn't trip over, all the things on the side of the road, he's walking the white line, and all it takes is half a second for somebody to lose focus as they're driving their car, and he's a dead man. And that's how people get killed. Oftentimes, it's horrible. And so we, as I should say my father's father was killed in traffic violence in a traffic crash. He grew up in poverty, that a legacy of which carried into my life, which I never really realized the power of that and what that meant to me, and sort of the way that I see these things that other people don't see. But this affects everyone in Shasta County. They're now calling it Vision Zero, a focus on safety for everyone, no matter what mode of transportation, and all of us need to walk and bike and get around in other ways besides driving a car, so.
Definitely, lived experiences can explain more, make you understand better someone's situation.
And I think that also points to, like you were asking, well, what are some of the ways, and I think it's talking to one another. And I think it's, we have a lot of different cultural divides. And I think that relationship and building that. And, I have assumptions when I first met all of you ladies about what you were like. And then you just get people together in a room with a donut and some coffee, and you can really see the humanity in each other. And I think we all want the same general things, but I think we've just been trained to stay within our homes and with just our families, but really our whole community is and should be our family, and we should care for one another in that way. I come from Hawaii with this, a lineage of strong women and leaders who, like those women in this film, they would do anything for their children. And really, I can look around at all of you, even those of you with white hair, and you are somebody's baby. And we all belong, and we need to care for one another. And so I think it's relationship, and it's breaking down those barriers, and we've got a lot of them. But seriously, food and a good time, or a film screening, and we can get to know one another. And if we all said, like, God, we're all moved by this, let's all, like, do something about it. Let's, like, sign something out. Let's, like, go and support some of the things that we're trying to do here. And really, I think you can connect the dots as far as, like, some of these movements are absolutely related to economics and how we're going to just, like, watch out for each other. So it's relationship, I think, relationship building.
Yeah, and I think when I'm out in the camps talking to people in our unsheltered community, that's one of the first things most of them say to me is, we wish more people would look us in the eyes and talk to us like we're real people, like we're humans, like we're not garbage. And I heard a kind of a shocking fact today. I was doing some fact checking about a community member who's in the criminal justice system right now for camping, for sleeping outside, who's going through the court system because she needed to sleep and she fell asleep and she was cited for it. It's a misdemeanor charge if she's charged with it, and she's being diverted from being cited through a community service program, which is great. But this community service program doesn't have funding anymore to do this diversion. And as I talked to the source, it turns out basically here in our city, we're paying the police to cite people, and then we're looking for state funds to uncite them through a diversion program. And what we should really be doing probably is providing those diversion from poverty programs in the first place so that people aren't criminalized for sleeping. So, those are the kinds of things, if we have that relationship building, if we talk to people who maybe intimidate us or frighten us or don't look like us in some way, haven't bathed in a long time, we get to know that their stories aren't that dissimilar to ours, really.
Well, we have a number of questions here. The first one is, what is happening in Shasta County around economic equity? And then I'm getting old, don't see well. So I'm not sure about the rest. it's talking about family on assistance. So what is happening in Shasta County about economic equity? So does anyone has?
Well, I know there was a group of us, worked with City of Reading on the general plan, sort of an equity justice piece. I can't say that we're all super excited about it yet, but there are a lot of people contributing to that, some of whom are here.
What's happening with the county and fair wages?
Well, you know, I can't really say about the county programs, but as far as SEIU 2015, we are arming people to become employed, giving them training. The community is aging. We're looking at a silver tsunami now, and our medical situation is not that great. So you want to keep your loved ones in their homes as long as humanly possible. You don't want them institutionalized. And so SEIU is training and arming people here in the community to become IHSS workers, and that's in-home health service workers, as well as educating those who are in the nursing homes about their rights as workers. And a lot is going on, but we're hiring a lot of people to do this work because it's an industry that's growing. And it's a fastly growing industry. So that's what I know about what SEIU is doing in the county or in the community as far as economics are concerned.
Well, I also work for United Way. So I would say, like right now, it's our VITA tax season. So one thing that they do is they're helping low-income families. They get their taxes done for free, and they really get the paperwork and do whatever they can so they can get the maximum return as possible. That is different, but that is one thing that I know it's being done. Not the county per se, but for a number of organizations in Shasta County that are, helping with low-income population.
I think maybe I have another answer. I mean, one thing I think we should celebrate is in downtown Reading we have two of the state's largest affordable housing and sustainable communities grants. So that's affordable housing and transportation to help people live low-cost housing and low-cost transportation. It's also low carbon emissions, so it's great for the climate crisis as a help. But we do have two of the state's largest, right? So we're housing people right now in downtown Reading. My program, so what we are going to be offering is bike share, so a system of pedal assist bikes on the streets available to everyone. So what we hear from so many people, we did a survey in advance, right? So people say things like, they move here or they live here and people don't have money to buy a car. My husband and I, we have one car. That's unusual. But so a lot of people don't have money to buy a car. But they can't get around without a car. The bus doesn't serve them. So they buy really cheap cars, but then it costs too much to maintain them. The car that is inexpensive could break down at any time. It leaves them vulnerable. So we hear this a lot, right? If we had an e-bike available to people, they could easily make trips. The average trip in Shasta County is 5 miles. The average e-bike trip is something like 9 or 12 or 16 miles. So it's easy if you have an e-bike to actually use that as transportation. But people don't want to they don't know how to fix a bike, they don't want to bother pumping up the tire, they don't want to deal with all that, right? So if we have a shared system, so what we are going to have in downtown Reading is a shared system. We're going to have very low-cost vouchers to people living with low income in downtown. So that'll be a transportation option for about $20 a year.
I want to give a shout out to legal aid attorneys We have Legal Services of Northern California here in Shasta County, and they receive, I believe, both state and federal funding essentially to work for people who are very low income, to stand sort of between these folks and, complete poverty when it comes to things like food benefits, Social Security benefits, mistakes in people's checks, things like that. Those attorneys are the ones who are helping people just who have the signs on their doors from from the sheriff's department saying you're going to be evicted in 2 days. They're the ones who are trying to figure out how to make the services work for the people who need them most and who have the least access to help. So I've learned about them just because we had an attorney write for Shasta Scout an opinion piece, and really opened my eyes to what an incredible program is happening right here in Reading.
It's good. I'll add, the county also has not only the WIC program, other programs that they talked about there. They have the WIC program. They also have the CalWorks program, who helps low mothers, single mothers, or with kids, by sending them to school, and they allow them to take 6 units only. They don't have to be full-time, and they get their financial aid, and they get extra support to give them a training so they can be more economically, get a better job. So there is that one also. What are the views of our local social services agencies here on Shasta County? You don't want to get me started.
Maybe you should be on this panel. You should answer that.
It happens a lot though, where I'm like, gosh, should I say something or should I just? It's traumatizing, I would say. At least my experience was really going through social services and trying to get some help was traumatizing. I left crying so many times, and it's demeaning. It just made me even look down on myself. I'm like, what did I do to get in that situation? I came here as an international student. I worked hard, I studied, and I got my degrees and everything. I went to graduate school, I did everything. Through some life events, I found myself having to come back here, having 2 kids, having to raise them by myself, not wanting to go there. And my friends keep telling me to go, so I end up like, okay, I'm just gonna put my pride aside and then, take the step and humble myself and go ask for help. And then you go in and then you meet that person who sees you as a Black woman coming with 2 kids and 2 little ones, and they've already made an idea, the stereotype of who you are. They don't know you. Then you open your mouth and, oh my God, she has an accent. Who is she coming? Here they're coming and they want to take everything for free. So you get hit with all of that, and you see it and you feel it, and it's like, it's okay, I'm just gonna go. So you leave, and then you talk to some friends and they build you up again, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go, I'm just, and then you go and you leave, and it's like, why you have my kids, I gotta make it happen. So you go, the paperwork, I've been to college, and it's like, oh my God, it's a lot, everything that you need. So that in itself, and then you finish, and they're like, okay, well, this, and they can only give you this, and I'm like, oh my God, you just break down again. So it is, I still have anxiety walking through. You see the old, I think it's Placer and Pine, or East Street, and you have the old, I think social services right there next to the Smart Center. That is a hard street for me still to this day. I don't even look
if I'm driving that way, I don't even want to look there. It's how bad it was. So that's one person experience. I'm not saying that everybody dealt with the same, but that is mine. So that I would say, and that was what, maybe, wow, close to 10 years ago. So hopefully things have changed a lot. I really do hope. It did made me go work for single at the college so I can help single mothers, low income. So that's also your experience. What we are talking about, your experience opens a lot, and then you try to find ways to make it better for others.
I think Shasta County is really facing a crisis right now when it comes to social services because there's a political battle over where the money needs to go and where it will be most useful. At Shasta Scout, I talk to a lot of whistleblowers who come to me out of local government, talking to me confidentially off the record, giving me information that will lead me to stories later. There are, over the last few months, I probably cry at my desk 3 to 4 times a week because I feel so overwhelmed by the state of our county and the fear that I have for how it could lead to an increase in deaths by suicide and fentanyl-related deaths and other things. The web of support for people who are experiencing mental health crisis, poverty, substance use disorders, it's a very complicated and challenging thing to support complicated and challenging people, which we really all are. So I think we just underestimate the need for social services and how deeply important that is to our county's survival. And I worry about it, and I think we need to get more of these stories out.
I do have another question. Keep coming. That's good. I like that.
They are engaged.
Is there any operating welfare right group in Shasta County? If so, what is the contact information?
Great question.
That's a great question. I'm not aware of any.
If you're watching this, please come tell us. Shasta Scout would love to tell the story of the welfare rights here.
I don't know any of that is in place. So maybe we need to do like Ruby Duncan and just
Start a movement.
Start a movement.
Yes.
We don't even need to start it from scratch. We can just kind of pick up some of the things that they're doing with the Poor People's Campaign, which is, pretty powerful. You in? You wanna do it?
I got transportation covered.
Yeah, right on. We can walk there.
Yeah, I do think there might be a group somewhere, or people are fighting individually, or it's like, like you were talking about people who would come to you and stuff, I would have people call me too and see, do you know anyone? I have this buddy. So, but not a specific group, so you would help them fill out the paperwork or make some phone calls and ask questions for them.
Western Service Workers Union does some of that kind of work.
Yes, thank you. Emily Cunningham, she is amazing, Western Service Union on Beverly. Yes, thank you. Do we have a version of Ruby Duncan here in the North State? What would you say?
I would like to think we have Ruby Duncans all throughout Shasta County. I know I'm one. Absolutely.
Yes. Amazing. Every single woman here is really amazing and lot of greatness and how would I say grassroots work to really make changes, touch people's lives and make changes.
Well, I was just going to say, though, that, in some ways I wish these lights were on all of you as well. And we were sitting in a circle and talking about this because I think that there are a lot of Ruby Duncans and they work in different ways. So some of them are the vocal ones, some of the ones who are at the tables, having the conversations and in the meetings. And then there are the backroom people who are going to be the whistleblowers or the people who care, and we'll do the backroom deals too, for the good of our community. So I do think that there are a lot of people, not just us. I'm just a human, just like Ruby Duncan was saying. I'm just a human with Kuleana, with some responsibility, because I do sit in a position of privilege as well, and I'm well aware of that, and so I have to wield what I have, and I know that everybody sitting here wields what you have.
I think what I really also enjoyed what she said about working with all these people is the greatest thing in my life. It will make me cry because, I've been doing what I've been doing here for 13 years. And for some reason, I think in the same way it was done with her, people point to me, but there's just no way that it's done by one person. Like everything that happens, there are so many people who contribute here in this community. There are people in this room who've contributed greatly to our work. And we have all kinds of amazing people in this county. And,
Absolutely.
I'm pretty excited to be from Shasta County. I came home on purpose. And none of this stuff happens. The transformation in downtown Reading is all about taking care of people who live on low income, and we don't, it doesn't get celebrated that way necessarily, but that's what's happening, and the people who are doing it know that that's what they're doing, and they know that we're very lucky to build a revitalization of our downtown, starting with housing and services for people living with low income. Normally a revitalization of a downtown happens, and then, like 15 years in, somebody says, oh, wait a minute, where do the teachers live, or whatever. And so a lot of people have put a lot of work into that. It's not just me or,
I just finished a class at the United Methodist Church, and it was Justice or Just Us. And like this group is meeting tonight, there are little clumps of groups of people putting their heads together and coming up with fantastic ideas. I know when we left this class, and it was a 5-week class, it took place every Wednesday from 10:30 until 12. We just finished last Wednesday, and we learned about racism and how it was traced back as far as the Bible. It was one of the best classes I've ever attended, and I made long-lasting relationships from that class. But we also left that class armed with information that we're going to disseminate throughout our community. And just like this group here, we're going to leave with more knowledge about something different than we came in with. And so even though we're not exactly Ruby Duncan, we're doing what we can in Shasta County when we can. And I think it's making a difference. When I look at the group of people that was at the Martin Luther King celebration, it was phenomenal. It was people from every walk of life. It was from people of every background you could ever imagine, and they stayed throughout the day, and they were willing to learn about other cultures, and it was just phenomenal.
Yes.
Yeah, and something, Michaela could probably speak more to this, but something that I've learned just from our Native Community Voices writers is the idea of how short really our lives are in the course of the world and the universe, and we may not make as much difference as we want to, but we're part of something bigger than ourselves. The idea of living to become a good ancestor, and not so much living to see the world see the change you made. If that to me has really shifted my perspective to have that long-term view of millennia of change, not 10 years or 20 years, but if what I managed to do with my life makes a little change in the course of history, and if we're all doing that together in relationship and in community, that's actually how change will happen. And And that's one of the things I'm learning from Indigenous wisdom, that I think we all can, to work together, to not be so focused on what we accomplish, but what all of us together are doing.
Next question that we have here from the audience. Do you think a free rubber Reading Area Bus Authority program would increase ridership?
No, the problem with our transit system is not the cost. The problem with our transit system, frankly, is we don't invest in it, but also because who has time to take an hour and a half for one trip? So not only does it not go where everybody needs to go, but a round trip is about 3 hours. And people don't know if they're going to make it to their class on time, they get to work late. The only people who take our bus transit system are people who have nowhere to be at any specific time, and it doesn't work.
I'll just second that, because that was, my husband took our daughter on a bus ride, just to ride the bus and learn how to ride the bus. And
Yeah.
it's really
And
well
I should
done.
say, it's not so, it's not easy to create a bus system that works in a completely spread out place like ours. However, the fact that we are so spread out in the poor, it is actually, somebody did that on purpose, so that's part of the problem as well. But it's very difficult right now to figure out how to run a bus system in a timely manner. It can be done, there are people trying to figure it out, but it's not really just about cost and making it free, because it doesn't cost that much even if really the only people who are riding the bus are people who just don't have to be anywhere at any particular time. And even a lot of time, nobody wants to spend 3 hours on a bus.
Who don't have a choice?
We don't have options,
Don't
yeah.
have options. I took the bus because I didn't have any other option with my kids and everything. I
Yeah.
would go shopping. It's really hard to do that in summer in Reading. You go shopping, you fill up your truck with milk. By the time you get home, it's all turned. It's all bad. So those are real stories here in Reading. It's really
Yeah.
it is hard, but there are people who don't have the option. They don't have the choice. That they need the bus because that's the only way they could do some shopping and do. So people do need it.
And we're working on other ways. There are other, yeah.
Okay, I think this one came first. Okay. What suggestion do you have for someone who wants to organize for change?
I think, I don't know, there's 1,000 suggestions, right? There's all kinds of things we could see. So I have this, I have right here, this is my equity plan for transportation, right? So we think very deeply about it, but there's a woman, Jane Jacobs, who wrote, "Cities have the capability of providing something for everyone only because and only when they are created by everybody." So part of the challenge is a lot of the things that are being decided and created for us, we don't have true engagement. It's not outreach. It's like people really being able to contribute, to know where to go and how to contribute, and to be involved in the creation of the world around them. That's one thing.
No, okay, I'll go. Whatever you're thinking about organizing around, it's about finding other people who care about that too. And once you find those people, then you start throwing some mud up on the wall. Like, what are we trying to solve here? What has been done? doing the research, but it's really about what do you want to do and find your people. And then once you find your people and you're talking, then go talk to people who you think are not your people and see if they're interested in your idea too, because a lot of times they care about the same thing and they just haven't been asked. And then culturally, some people aren't going to get involved because they're not going to get involved unless you ask, because it's rude to like just insert yourself, you know? At least from a Hawaiian perspective, you know, you just are quiet and you listen. And so I think it's about finding your people, though. But whatever you're passionate about, if you're out there and you want to organize, I mean,
I definitely have an idea. I'm waiting for that because I really want to know, because I think we need to start organizing after yesterday meeting, the one that went all the way to 9:30. I think we need to leave this meeting with ideas about how to organize, to where should we go storm to get those machines to come back.
I think it's always useful to look for people who are challenging structures of power, because structures of power, essentially, they're self-maintaining. And we saw that very much in the film, you know, especially white males with money have run things in America forever. So I think when we look for people who are challenging power in whatever way, and it doesn't have to be loud, it doesn't have to be aggressive, it can be underground, but those are the people who have what it takes inside of them, who have character and integrity and strength. They're going to show us the way. And I think there's so many ways to organize for change. That's why I love highlighting all the different voices on Shasta Scout, because there isn't just one way to do it. It's about getting to know other people and seeing how they're creating change, how each culture and each, you know, person's gift kind of contributes to the picture. But I would say that the unifying theme is this, you know, basically not having bought into these structures of power, because most of us aren't benefited by them. Obviously, I come from a place of significant privilege as a white woman. Religion really was what kind of took my power from me for most of my life. So there's all kinds of ways that power can affect us, and I think reaching across, you know, differences culturally and socially to find other people organizing for change, that's where we'll see movement.
I want to say too, like, you know, when you're organizing, it's not all, we all love each other and we all get along. I mean, there are differences, and it's about, like, you know, get tough, because the reality is we don't have to agree on everything. It's just like, what are we working toward? And let's work toward that, and don't be so fragile, and just kind of like be okay with being wrong. I mean, like, practice being wrong and having grace with it, and then say sorry really fast and mean that. And
Definitely.
and just keep trying to do better when you're around that organizing table, and give yourself some grace, because we're up against, you know, a system that I think, frankly, is not working for every human. I think we know that. And so it's just a matter of, like, we see those people who are out on the street who don't have food or whatever. It's like, we can look them in the eye and then show our kids that matters. We were at a grocery store. Dude's outside with his, I didn't realize he had a dog in his shopping cart. But as we were leaving, I asked him, I said, "Excuse me, may I offer this to you?" And he said, "Yeah." I gave it to him. And we got into the car, and my daughter said, "Did you plan that?" I said, "Yeah, I planned that. I wish now I'd gotten him a warm meal instead of a cookie, but I thought everybody wants a cookie," you know? But, you know, because, and then she just kind of, I could see her little file cabinet. Like, it just went in the back of her mind. Because we have to care for one another. Next time with a meal.
And don't be afraid for people to be angry at you either.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of times I think people see the shiny, happy side of Shasta Scout, you know, but there's a lot of community anger. There's a lot of direct messages and emails that that could be threatening or scary or just overwhelming sometimes. But those are emotions. Of course, when you're working to change things, emotions are going to come up, and learning to not take responsibility for those or own them, but just to recognize it's part of the process of change. It makes people uncomfortable and it makes them angry.
I was going to say also, there's one of my favorite books. I keep it by my bedside. It's called Origins. It was written recently. And it's a book by someone who did a lot of research into people who do things and create change, and how they did it. And there's so many different ways. But, you know, it's a little bit, well, in at least in all the work that I have done, it doesn't always look like the movie we just saw, like where there's a clear, almost, okay, evil is maybe a strong word, but, you know, there's some clear evil and some big fights, and you go out and scream, and, you know, that, I could tell you that would not work, right? So when I go in to create change and started doing it, I don't know if you noticed, I wear pearls. I have this thing that we joke about now, where when I go in to meet with the men in power, I wear a pink sweater. And it seems ridiculous, but, you know, there are lots of ways to create change, and it's not always shouting and fighting. And in the work that I have done, in fact, if I started shouting and fighting, and I knew at the outset, you just easily get shut out. And there are many things that need to change, and the people who need to help make that change happen are not necessarily evil. You know, they are working within a system that was created some decades ago in a different context that doesn't work now, and they don't realize it. And, you know, so it's not always, there are lots of ways to do it, and really, if you want to study it, there's a great book called Origins.
Thank you. We have about 7 minutes left, so I'm gonna go with the last questions we have here. How did your organization start? What problem were you trying to address?
Well, my organization started with the farm workers. Cesar Chavez, they created a movement that encompassed a lot of people, and they weren't afraid of the change. They were the change that they wanted to see make, and it's grown. It's grown. The movement for poor people working and having a job that pays well enough to eat and feed your family and live with a house that's not falling down around you, it's important, and it shouldn't be overlooked.
So essentially, Shasta Scout started to challenge power structures in the media and in our community. It came out of seeing that there were big stories that we didn't see local media really provoking change around, and we wanted to see the media asking hard questions, and we wanted to see the media elevating different voices. If we're going to talk about, you know, land use, we need to talk about housing for people who are low income. We need to talk about the original stewards of the land, the native people here. You know, those kinds of things haven't ever really been brought up by the media in Shasta County in a regular way. So whatever the topic is, you know, we're wanting to kind of shift that conversation to have more of the voices that are directly affected, not just because that's equity, but because actually matters to all of our happiness. I think that's something that can often be misunderstood, that this is like a progressive thing about equity and justice. But this is for me as a woman, as a mother. I have 4 kids. This is about my children's future, and I want them to live in a good place. And I know that the people who have the wisdom that my children need are the voices that I want to elevate with Shasta Scout. So that's kind of what directs our work.
I was just sitting here, like, there's such a long story, right, of how it all starts. And where does it start? So it was actually talking to Annalise. I don't know what you asked me, but it suddenly hadn't really dawned on me that I grew up in a family where my father's father had been killed on the highway in a car crash. We call it traffic violence. He'd lived in poverty his whole life, and it came into my life as a child. My mother grew up in a family that had lived in Copenhagen. And I had these two things in my head that, what the consequences can be and that there's another way. And it hadn't really occurred to me that, I don't know if you really want to, like, where does something start? I don't know, like maybe that's where. And then when I moved home to work here, I worked for global climate change. And I was all excited to come home and ride my bike because when I was a kid, that's how we would get around. And all of a sudden, I can't ride my bike anymore because in 30 years, we've changed all the streets. And the only thing allowed on the streets now are fast-moving trucks and cars. And then somebody wanted to do something, and I was like, okay, I'll help. I was like, okay, I'll help. Yeah, I can hold that meeting. One meeting, I can hold that meeting. And that was 13 years ago.
And I just want to say, we did tell the story of Shasta Living Streets on Shasta Scout about a year and a half ago, and I think it was a really good example of, I saw Anna as somebody who's a mover and shaker, a person of power in the community. And when I went in and interviewed her, I learned that her story came from this history of traffic violence and poverty, and that was what had driven her movement forward. That was really powerful discovery, for me, and I think to share as an origin story behind one of our local organizations. And I'm sure many more stories out there of people that I think of as privileged or powerful, but still have some of that history that I need to learn. So.
I don't think I knew it until you asked the question.
So I'm Native Hawaiian, and Native Roots Network works to uplift Indigenous lifeways. We do believe, and you mentioned something about that there are keys there in our languages and our lifeways that can actually help us moving forward into the future, how we're going to conduct ourselves, thinking in terms of we versus I, and some of those things. But we began a little bit before 2004. There was, many of us, and Sky behind camera is also part of it. Well, this is his homeland. We'd go to the annual Pit River Ancestral Run, and a young man, he died. And we were thinking about how our young people suffer from higher rates of incarceration, so many different negative health impacts on their lives as people living in their own homelands, disenfranchised from their land, canceled as tribes, and all these different kinds of things that work against anybody trying to get ahead. Mm-hmm. And not just ahead, but staying alive. And so the discussion started about how can we support these young Native men and Native boys, because my husband, we planned this thing about going out for this month-long trip so Native youth could learn about other Native youth and then actually cross-pollinate and then teach each other about some of the things that are happening in their community. And again, sorry, Sky. Sky was one of those young men who went on this trip, and you could see the change with these young men, and who at the ages of 16 really wants to talk in public. But they were made to talk about their communities, and what that did was that just brought up in them, or at least the realization, if they didn't already know it, to express like their pride in themselves, when really, as an Indigenous person and a Native Hawaiian growing up in my homeland, and the kinds of things that I experienced, it's part of, everything that I've ever learned. When you learn something, it's important not just to like, yay, you get to benefit from that, but you actually have a responsibility to then impart wherever it is you are, all the things that you need for a healthy community. And so when we created that program, and that's how it started, and it turned into a number of other things, including downtown pop-up art shows and just everything else, to be able to tell that story.
Thank you, thank you. Wow. I like these community discussions because I always leave really empowered. I'm leaving like, okay, gosh, what am I gonna go do now? So, sorry girls, my kids are right there. We're gonna have a huge conversation in the car. You need to do this. So thank you all for being here. Really, thank you. There is a saying in my country that a leader is like not a compost pile, like we call it like a garbage pile. Different though. The garbage there is where people would go and try to dig and find the best treasures. It's also the place, the garbage place that would stay there for years and years, rain after rain. It's where you can get the best crop. So as community leaders and change makers, it's like what you talked about. You are like that pile where you get all the good and also the negative. So it's a fine line. It's a hard position, but you are just riding the wave and making change happen. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please sign up for Shasta Scout if you haven't yet.
Yeah, they all have websites too. They all have, if you want to find out more about the organizations, you can check with them. And don't forget to fill out the survey. And our next film on April 5th is called Free Chol Soo-lee, about a Korean man wrongfully convicted of murder and the effects of our carceral system on him. And there's a postcard there if you want to.
Look, you're so good.